Larry Moore and Curly. He does that.
He does that like that.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is the last film in the Indiana Jones film series.
Well done, boy.
Sure, they technically made a couple more theatrical films, but Last Crusade was a true and perfect ending to what this series was. Despite this, Last Crusade had a somewhat tumultuous production process. It was originally supposed to take place in a haunted house, then it moved to the Fountain of Youth somewhere in Africa with Indy fighting a ghost in Scotland along the way. Then they had Indy playing chess with real humans on the whim of the Monkey King, and oh my god, at one point, Henry Jones Sr. was supposed to literally ascend on a stairway to heaven after touching the Holy Grail. But we didn't get any of that.
You don't disappoint, Dr. Jones.
Or any of the other metric ton of weird stuff they discussed when making this movie.
We just throw this stuff out there and hope that some of it sticks to the wall.
Maybe that's why it took them 5 years to make the damn film compared to 3 between Raiders and Temple. Spielberg even dropped out of directing Big and Rain Man to make this movie. If y'all thought Temple of Doom was weird, this one was going to be bonkers. But instead, we got Last Crusade, a somewhat safe sequel that, perhaps through the frustrations of the film's development and the reception to Temple of Doom, intentionally harkened back in many ways.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I just wanted to bring back the spirit of the original Raiders and have some fun. I wanted to bring the cast back that I had missed in Temple of Doom, so Elliot came back and he was in a key role, and bringing back Sala and just bringing the spirit of what got us so pregnant with the series originally in 1980.
This is a much tamer Raiders sequel. Even the title reveal is more tame than Temple. There's no weirdness, no schlock, no Indy fighting the Grail Knight on horseback, which was, again, part of one of the earlier drafts of the film. It's Raiders 2. It's what y'all wanted.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
And it's fine for what it is, though part of me is interested in what could have been if they chose to take another Temple of Doom type risk. But because audiences were baffled by Temple, they chose to largely play it safe this time around. It's pretty much the exact opposite of Temple, where instead of doing everything different with no returning characters, we kinda just get the same movie again. We return to the college where Indy teaches. We even have him writing on the chalkboard, underlining a word, just like in Raiders. The ladies love him again. We bring back Brody. We bring back Sala. We've got another Christian artifact for Indy to find. The main plot of the film is kicked off by a conversation between Brody and Indy talking about his most recent conquest. It's even shot and framed the exact same way. In Raiders, it's a South American idol of some sort, and in Crusade, it's a crucifix from Coronado, a Spanish conquistador. Not technically related, I guess, but like tangentially related. Unlike Raiders, Indy actually has the artifact this time. It's kind of cool in a way, showing the growth of his character throughout the 3 films. I know Temple is technically a prequel, but whatever. We bring back the Nazis as the bad guys. The main villain is another guy with a passion for archaeology who's also working with the Nazis.
Archaeology is our religion.
Like yourself, Dr. Jones, I have a passion for antiquities.
There's a showdown in a canyon. We get a brutal death caused by the film's MacGuffin, and so on. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. I generally like the film's intro, but it's probably the weakest out of the 3 in my opinion. All 3 films begin with a little mini adventure unrelated to the main film, and this one has us meeting a young Indiana, which, you guessed it, was George Lucas's idea, who has a weird relationship with putting kids in his movies for some reason.
I told Steven, what if we started out with him as a little boy? So he said, well, okay.
With that said, it fits in here well enough given the film's theme of multiple generations of the Jones family. It's kind of neat that Indy meets a darker version of his future self. Real Indy is a bit of an amalgam of his righteous younger self and this more rapacious treasure hunter. While I like the transition from his younger to his older self, I thought the fight on the boat was one of the most implausible opening action scenes ever. Getting away to where? He's stuck on your boat with your henchmen. Where's he gonna go? And then he just kind of jumps into the freezing water in the middle of a storm at night. I was like waiting for a boat with Sala or something to show up, but no, this was his entire plan. And then the boat just kind of explodes on its own with no input from Indy. Lucky he jumped off, I guess? I don't know. I'm honestly just nitpicking. I just thought this whole sequence was kind of comical.
That was great. That was really great.
Then we kick off the plot, which again is very reminiscent of Raiders in both its structure and visuals, with repeating characters and locations.
Do you believe, Marcus? Do you believe the Grail actually exists?
Are you kidding me? Bro has some pretty high standards of needing proof before believing in the supernatural. After seeing real magic with his own eyes in Temple of Doom, like a dude getting his heart ripped out alive, he has the audacity to say,
I don't believe in magic, a lot of superstitious hocus pocus.
then he basically proves that the Jewish or Christian God is real, and he's still like, damn, I'm really not sure what to think here. I'm a pretty healthy skeptic myself, but come on. Moving on, I felt as though Donovan was a bit of an underutilized villain. He gets Indy to help him out, and then the next time we see him, it turns out he just happens to be working with the Nazis. I did like the imagery of him pouring the champagne into the flutes, evoking the Grail. Elsa has a little bit more going on. She too is spellbound by the Grail, but the film does an okay job at making you feel sympathy for her, despite her betrayal of the Joneses, and however begrudgingly, her working with the Nazis.
You came back for the book? Why?
My father didn't want it incinerated.
Is that what you think of me? I believe in the Grail, not the swastika.
All you guys who do this, you can have your fingers crossed behind you.
Hey, if you're liking the video, please subscribe. Okay, bye. The film is a lot more lighthearted than the previous two films.
At 11 o'clock! What happens at 11 o'clock?
Raiders takes itself pretty seriously all the way through, and Temple is weird and campy, but also quite dark. Last Crusade is a clear attempt to move back toward a more Raiders-esque tone, but while being more playful, perhaps as a slight overcorrection after Temple. One of my bigger issues with the film is that I didn't really buy into the central relationship, Indy and his rat. Oh wait, I meant Indy and his dad. I honestly thought the film didn't do a very good job of making you sympathize with Henry Jones Sr. He just comes across like a terrible father who cared more about the Holy Grail, pretty well understood to be entirely fictional even in the early 20th century, than his son. He appears to be overly strict, cold, and distant throughout the events of the film.
Oh.
It's important.
Then wait. Count to 20.
No, Dad, you listen.
Junior!
1, 2, 3, 4.
In Greek.
The closest we get to the film attempting to justify this behavior is their conversation on the Zeppelin. Indy explains how he felt lonely growing up because his dad was such an asshole, and Senior goes,
Actually, I was a wonderful father.
and justifies it by admitting that he neglected him.
Tell you to eat up, go to bed, wash your ears, do your homework? No, I respected your privacy, and I taught you self-reliance.
What you taught me was that I was less important to you than people who'd been dead for 500 years in another country. And I learned it so well that we've hardly spoken for 20 years.
The main theme of the film is that Indy's Holy Grail is his relationship with his father, and while he spends the whole film looking for the real object, he's really looking for the figurative Grail in his dad. In my opinion, this doesn't completely work in the execution.
You left just when you were becoming interesting.
Could it have worked better with some tweaking? Yes. Going back to that scene, there's a moment where maybe they could connect on a somewhat deeper level.
I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?
But the script just doesn't know what to do because the two characters don't really have much of a connection outside of being blood related.
I can't think of anything.
Then what are you complaining about?
So they just get right into the business of the plot.
We have work to do.
That's not to say there aren't a lot of fun moments involving Indy interacting with his dad. Sure there are. Plus, Sean Connery gives a great, believable, and infectious performance as Henry Jones Sr.
And then when it came time to casting it, I said to George, there's only one person that can play Indy's father, and that's, James Bond.
But I just don't think their relationship completely worked as portrayed in this film. Hell, even when he's telling him directly to his face that Elsa's a Nazi,
What?
he just doesn't believe him or something. I'm honestly not even sure why. The execution of the scene is kind of clunky. Is it because he doesn't have a connection with his dad? Is it because he wants Allison's duty? I was kind of baffled by the scene, honestly. Kind of felt out of character for someone who is typically pretty callous when it comes to women.
It was wrong and you knew it.
You knew what you were doing.
The biggest trouble with her is the noise.
Connery's delivery is incredibly blasé as well.
And don't listen to her.
Like, he's not even guessing here. He knows for a fact that she's a Nazi. I don't know. It's a fine idea, but executed somewhat clunkily. Is that a word? Clunkily?
People who really know what they're doing.
Visually speaking, Last Crusade mostly holds up. I'm not going to go too deep into it since I'd be reiterating the points I made in my Raiders and Temple reviews, but a lot of the same quote-unquote problems persist in Crusade. Like, these sets are just so obviously fake when viewed on Blu-ray. It's also clear they chose to rely more heavily on special effects for one reason or another, and the amount of compositing and whatnot that they chose to do in this film kinda makes it arguably the worst in terms of holding up visually. Like I teased in the beginning of the video, they really had some balls to the wall ideas for this film, and after it was all trimmed down, we still had a movie that would be incredibly ambitious from a special effects perspective at the time.
Why don't we just use a VistaVision camera clean and mat them all in later? Let George Lucas worry about it.
Do these dated effects make the movie worse? No, of course not. Still, plenty of people in my comments seem to think that by my pointing out these things, I'm somehow arguing that they make the movies bad, which I'm definitely not trying to do.
One of the reasons that the visual effects in this trilogy really hold up today is that the trilogy itself holds up. It's not a time-dependent story, and it's an adventure that's just, you know, captures people's imaginations no matter what generation you're from.
Anyway, this channel is called Does It Hold Up? And this review has been somewhat of a departure from that conceit, but the truth is, I just really didn't have much to say in regard to asking and answering that question when it came to this film. Other than the visual effects and just feeling like a late 80s movie in the intangible ways it can feel like that.
And if you are a Scottish lord, then I am Mickey Mouse.
Last Crusade holds up very well to modern standards. Compared to its two predecessors, the action scenes also feel significantly closer to something you'd see today. I don't think all of its humor works 100% perfectly, but I'm glad they chose to do things a little bit differently than Raiders, despite the film being a clear attempt to return to its style. This isn't the masterpiece that is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's not quite as cohesive. Maybe if you rounded off the edges a bit, as with Temple, you could have gotten close. Unlike Temple though, everything does flow better, and the humor, while not working 100% of the time, is markedly better executed.
No ticket.
While I don't like certain things, like turning Indy's former mentor, who was implied to have gone on similar adventures in his youth in Raiders,
You know, 5 years ago, I would have gone after it myself. I'm really rather envious.
to a bumbling comic relief character who apparently gets lost in his own museum,
You know, Marcus got lost once in his own museum.
I appreciated how it felt like a more mature experience in a lot of ways, including some solid dramatic moments like Donovan shooting Henry Jones Sr. point blank.
You're absolutely right.
It has coherent themes, excellent action sequences, great characters overall, and an engaging story. I think modern audiences will still enjoy Last Crusade quite a bit. While not quite on the same level as Raiders as a film, if we're going off of which one feels the least dated, which is kind of the point of this project, I guess, Last Crusade wins that contest by a fairly wide margin, I think. With that in mind, I'd say that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade holds up fairly well. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.